Thank you for coming to this presentation on audience management practices of live streamers. My name is Yvette, and I'll be doing this presentation on behalf of myself and my colleague Guo Freeman. Twitch is one of the largest live streaming platforms in the world where people can stream whatever they want. Here we see people holding a fashion show in Animal Crossing, as well as playing the piano or having the stream just record themselves studying. One of the interesting things about Twitch and most other live streaming platforms is that the audience can interact with the streamer via chat. Today, we're going to be trying to understand how streamers conceptualize their audience by looking at three research questions. 1. What are their perceived audience? 2. How do they learn about their audience? And 3. How do they manage interactions with different audiences? We're going to be using Goffman's theory of performance that uses stage as an analogy. He says that performers must identify audiences so as to adjust their performance. For this study, we interviewed 25 streamers on Twitch. They were recruited at TwitchCon, which is a convention for Twitch enthusiasts, as well as via social media. Our participants were mainly from North America or the UK and were English speakers between the ages of 20 and 52, and were diverse in terms of gender, sexual orientation, and the type of content that they produce. The streamers were also had varied numbers of followers between 100 and 200,000. So the first research question, how do streamers categorize their audience? We found that streamers thought of their audience as these 6 different categories. First, family/community. These are people that the streamer felt very close to. Secondly, supporters/fans. That's pretty self-explanatory. Third, we have social grouping by identity. So streamers who had a very strong group identity, for example, their LGBT status or their race, usually used tags to identify themselves. And they thought that people who were coming to their stream were also looking at those tags and identified with those tags. Fourth, we have content enthusiasts. These are people who are really interested in the content that the streamer is producing. And then fifth, we have trolls. These are people who are just coming in to disrupt the stream. And lurkers. Lurkers are people who are not interacting with chat at all and are just viewers that the streamer doesn't really know who they are. So how do streamers figure out who their audience is? We found that there were mainly 3 different methods. The first was explicitly questioning their audience about who they are. And this happens both on Twitch and off of Twitch as well. For example, they would ask their audience about their demographics, like where they are, who they are, what are their interests, and through these questioning are able to understand more about their audience. Secondly, they can get aggregate information from both internal analytics as well as third-party analytics. And this doesn't tell the streamer in detail about each person, but it gives them a broad sense of how many people are on their stream and where they're coming from, especially if they were directed to the stream from other social media. The third is the list feature. This is a feature on Twitch where the streamers can click on this list and see the usernames of everybody who is watching. And this is difficult to do for streamers who have many viewers, but if they were smaller streamers, they would utilize this feature a lot, especially looking for regulars and trying to confirm to see if their moderators were in chat. One of the things that we saw in this research was that streamers had very little information about their audience and viewership. And so this creates a little bit of an imbalanced engagement model where the streamers have to continuously engage inquire, and share more information, whereas the audience members have very limited options of how they can share and what they could share. If you look at the images on the bottom, on the left side, this is a typical streamer setup where they have a computer and they're producing some kind of content. They don't see the viewers. On the other hand, the viewers are watching the streamer and they get a lot of information about the streamer because the streamer is constantly communicating. So this leads to sometimes what we call a parasocial relationship, where the viewers think they have a very intimate relationship with the streamer because they have so much information about the streamer. But this is not necessarily reciprocated by the streamer, who has very limited information about the viewers. Streamers feel a huge responsibility or pressure to interact with everyone, especially because viewers get upset when streamers don't respond to them. However, interacting with everyone is unrealistic, especially if you have many, many viewers. So streamers incorporate this strategy that we call zooming in and out, where sometimes they interact with a very specific person and address somebody directly, but then they zoom out to interact more with the general audience. However, we did see that among smaller streamers who don't have many viewers, they do take a brute force method to engage with everybody at the cost of content creation. And that is because if you're trying to address everyone's content, that means that you have to step away from the content that you're producing. And this is something that the larger streamers are not able to do. But if you're a very small streamer, sometimes you can pause the content in order to talk to your audience. So, how do streamers decide who to zoom in on? The first is a new viewer. The streamer gets a notification when somebody newly follows the stream. And so sometimes they give them a shout out saying, "Hey, thank you for joining the stream." Secondly, they give attention to subscribers. Subscribers are paying viewers. Now, in order to watch something on Twitch, you don't have to pay, but you could choose to pay in order to get special emoticons. And if you are a paying viewer, you get a badge next to your name. On the screenshot that I have here, you can see that this is one of my favorite streamers, Angry Pug. And you see that some users in the chat have a little pug icon next to their name. Those are people who are subscribers. You can also see that the pug icons are different colors. The colors indicate how long that person has been a subscriber. So when a streamer is looking at the chat, they can easily see who is a paying member and who is an older paying member. Finally, relying on moderator help. Inevitably, when the streamer starts to gain more and more viewers, they cannot produce content as well as interact with chat at the same time because there are too many people. Moderators can help with that, where the moderators can pick up the conversation while the streamer is producing their content. However, of course, this can lead to weird boundary issues with moderators. Um, Moderators might feel like they're helping the streamer out so that they're friends, while the streamer may not feel the same way. Finally, we also have random strategy when all else fails. When the streamer is busy producing content, sometimes they will look aside to look at the chat, and sometimes they will pick up a random thing that they saw. There's no logic behind this. It's just whatever they happen to notice at the time, and that's who they will zoom in on. In summary, we have learned that streamers mentally categorize their viewers into multiple categories, but that conceptualizing the invisible audience, especially lurkers, is very difficult. We have learned that streamers need more technical ways to manage their viewers. We have some ideas for this. It would be nice if there were some more visual cues that enable the streamer to categorize their audience. Streamers also would like to have more engagement history with individual viewers, as well as real-time analytics. This might include on-the-fly polls to differentiate between active and passive lurkers, or some location metrics that are provided to them based on the IP of their viewers. These are just some of the ways in which technical features could help streamers understand who their viewers are. Thank you for listening to this talk. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via Twitter or email.